Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing great today and enjoyed these stories. If you want to support my channel, then make sure you check out my Patreon in the description, where you can also get early access to my videos, and make sure you check out my podcast also in the description below. I have a quick message I'd like to share before the story starts. So for today I'd like to share this, something which I think is often an underrated tool in helping you if you're struggling with your mental health can be exercise. It doesn't have to be too much or too intense. I think just something to get you out there and get the endorphins from the exercise is really important. You can either do it alone or maybe try doing it with different people. I think doing sports socially can be a really good thing too, and a good way to meet new people. I know for myself I always feel much better when I exercise. I don't force myself to do it when I don't want to, I just try and go consistently. And that's what really helps me. So hopefully that can help some people. And one other thing I find very important, and I do say it quite often, is the importance of having goals and things that you're working towards. I think especially if you have an overactive mind, if you have too much idle time and too much isolation, I think sometimes it might give you too much time just to overthink and have your mind turning on itself. So I think it's always important to get out and have things to do. I know for myself that that's always the case. Even if I have a big break from work, I find that after about a week or 5 days, my mind seems to start turning on me and I overthink very little things in a negative way. So I find for myself that I have to have goals and things that I'm working on and get out and see people. So anyway, I hope that can help some people and I hope you'll enjoy these stories. Take care and I'll speak to you all soon. When I grew up, I'd always play out with the same group of kids. We all went to the same school together. I didn't actually live on the same side of town as them. Basically, the area that I grew up in had one big road that went down the middle, and it kind of divided them off pretty nicely. It made it a little bit of a pain to get over to the other side because the crossings were really slow, but that wasn't too much of an issue. The side of which I grew up in probably wasn't the best out of the two sides. There also wasn't really that much to do here. It made me get bored quite quickly. This was just basically before there was really video games or you couldn't really play them online. So obviously you get quite bored and you didn't end up doing much else. The only way that you could get around was by using your pedal bike. I don't have an issue with this. I actually have quite a nice one and I was really happy for having it. At the time, my brother would come with me sometimes when we'd play. Basically, we'd just agree what time we wanted to meet up at and just call each other on the house phones and then go outside. So it was pretty common for me to make my way across to the other side of town to play with some of my friends and just hang out there and relax generally. You know, basically just have a good time together. These were pretty good days. I absolutely love going to the store to get the big bottles of Pepsi. This is when you had them in the glasses and I thought that was kind of cool. It was something that I always looked forward to. To be honest, I'm not sure how that I didn't end up with diabetes because how bad my diet was. I just constantly ate bad food, but that was fine. While we were playing there was always rumours about some kind of weird house and some weird cave accompanying it that nobody could ever seem to locate. But we'd hear rumours about this off a few other people, and in fact actually some adults that warned us against going there. They said that if you ever see the old burnt out house or that cave, don't go into it. I mean, firstly, the way that you had to get there was through an area which flooded very often. When you walked through it, it honestly looked like an atomic bomb had hit the place. There was all kinds of downed trees and stuff over there, and all kinds of other things that you obviously couldn't move. It would actually make it a really dangerous cross into at the same time, which is one reason that you didn't really want to go there. They did have one log which had actually been cut down and made into some kind of bridge. The funny thing is, it didn't have barriers though on either side, so you could have easily fell. Not like the drop was very big, but I guess maybe in winter it could have been a lot more dangerous. However, we would so often go across there and just have an explore. I mean, you know how it is, when you're young and you've got that inquisitive nature, then anything like this you kind of jump at, just to get out there and have some adventure. We were so bored other than this. I mean, we had some sports like baseball and stuff which we would play, but we didn't do it too often. Thing is, there wasn't that many places that we could go and play at really. Where I lived, they had this really stupid habit of locking up everything really early. I mean, basically they'd close it a second that you'd got out of your school, and then it was dark, so there wasn't much you could do. The ones that were actually open also kind of had a way of attracting weirdos and dodgy people. You know, like the people that just let their dogs run wild and chase absolutely everything and made no effort to call them back? Or just drug dealers, just not a nice place. Especially not where you'd want to go when you were young, even though there was quite a big group of us. So anyway, we like coming to this place for a number of reasons, but the main one was just to get away from everything and just have some fun together. We were always trying to look for that place though, but we could really never find it. We thought it was just rumours and that maybe this never existed. So we're all playing out here one day when one of us says, "Yeah, you know that cave? I think I know where it is." And basically we're following him. I actually had to bring my bike, and so did a few others of us as we went further into the woods trying to locate it. It's not really easy to pass through here though, to be honest, because I don't know what they were, but some kind of plants, like you know the ones with the little thorns and stuff, and the ones that sting you. I don't know what they're called, but they're on either side of us, other than the big trees, were the only thing that was safe from this, so it wasn't very nice passing through here. Luckily I had long socks on, so it didn't get my ankles, but I knew some of my friends were suffering. They actually try and drive on their bikes through it, but it's too exhausting, so it wasn't really the best of places. But we had faith in him, and he keeps on leading us on this adventure. Now, none of us were actually entirely convinced that he was going to be able to find it. I've heard so many stories of similar things off of other people before, saying that they've got a friend who can show them where something is and it doesn't come true. But I don't know. Just seeing the new scenery actually made it relatively interesting. It was kind of like bright but not too bright, if that makes sense. Like, you know, not when the sun's setting, but when it's cloudy and it's hard to tell exactly what time of day it was. Well, it's just like that. But we keep on going. We do this for quite a long time and we don't really seem to be getting anywhere. We were going so far now. Well, eventually we come up to an area which is much more rocky. Oh my god, what if this guy's actually right? I seriously didn't know what I'd do if we actually found this place. I mean, I was going to be too scared to go in truthfully. I could already feel my little heart pounding, and I was actually nervous about this. I didn't want to let on to the others, but I remembered thinking to myself that what if we actually have to go in this cave? It's not like any of us had torches or lights or anything, so we're not going to be able to see too well. And we come up to a Y shape in the road. We can either go downhill or across some bridge, and my friend actually stops for a while telling us that, well, he can't quite remember what way it is. We kind of looked at each other confused. It actually didn't dawn on us at the time, but we're very lost now, and we're going to have an issue actually getting home if we're not careful. But my friend would not stop going on about how that we're going the right way. So we eventually decided to go across the bridge. The main reason for that is that it's easier for us to go across on our bikes when my friend stops. He says, "Hey, look at that," and he turns and sprints on the other way until he jumps on his bike, and a few of the other guys all ride on their bikes trying to get out of there. Yes, they played the abandonment trick on me. They've took me out here, and they thought it would be funny just to ride off and just leave me on my own here. I could have easily caught up with them, but I just couldn't be bothered. I don't know why, I just basically turned and watched them going away. So off they went, and I just sat there, just taking it all in for a minute. Now, a lot of you might have thought that I was panicking, but I just wasn't for some reason. Now, I was left with some kind of ultimatum. I had to either press on alone or just head back to the relative safety. And probably for the first time in my life, I decided to be brave. I think it felt kind of nice to be on my own out here, so I just started driving very slowly on my bike, going across the bridge. I was taking advantage of the fact that I could drive along some flat ground and not really have too many issues here, so I do so. I'm doing it for a while and I eventually come up to an opening with lots of rocks everywhere. This is great, I think to myself. I'm now at a place where that I can ride my bike really easily, so I start doing so. I'd actually never really driven on rocky places like this before in my life, so I thought it was really cool to be able to do it on my bike. It looked really beautiful here. Now I've got some water on me, so every so often I'm just drinking that and periodically going to the toilet. I probably drank too much water, but I like the fact that it's making my backpack less heavy. At the time I thought it could make me go faster, and I get up to an area that seems oddly familiar. I don't know why that is. I've not been here before, but I seem to know what way I'm going. I rest for a moment and notice something odd. There's some kind of markings on one of the rocks close to me. It kind of looks like if you draw stick figures with their hands up in a Y shape. There was about 8 of these figures there, then a much larger one further off onto another rock. I think this is odd. I run my hand along it and can see that it's been there for a while. It's clear that it's been pretty well weathered since it was first put there. And I think this is kind of cool. I've not really seen much like this. Then I get a fright as I turn around and I go off balance. My bike has kind of went out from underneath me and I start falling with the bike. I'm still riding it, but I'm gaining momentum and my brakes don't seem to be working. This happens for probably about 10 seconds before I finally lose control and slam into a rock which throws me off my bike. I get up and I turn round and start panicking. My bike is ruined. My very front wheel has entirely broken. It's really dented, almost as though that you took a big sledgehammer and smashed it as hard as you can. And there was no way I was going to be able to use it unless I become a tricycle expert. I was in big trouble now. My mom was going to kill me. She literally just brought me it. I love that bike so much. It took me a while to calm down from this actually, and I start telling myself that it's going to be okay. Just keep going, just keep going. So now I continue on foot, which probably wasn't the best of ideas. But like I said, I seemed to know which way I was going. For some reason, I just instinctively knew that if I kept going down, I would probably get to this cave. That was weird. I sat there for a while, and I can see what I think is one more person near the mouth of where I think the cave might be, and then another appear. I'm actually really far away, but I decide just to stop and observe them. I really can't see. I try to cuff my hands to get a bigger view, or just to see what else is going on around myself and block out some of the sunlight, but it doesn't make much of a difference. So I just continue walking down the rocky trail. This is actually a welcome relief from the other area of which I was walking upon. It's a lot easier travelling down here, and I feel okay. I was really bummed out about my bike though. I just can't stop thinking about it. It was so perfect. I just loved that thing. I knew too that it was going to be a while before I could get another one, so I'm pretty deflated now, but I just keep going. I suddenly realised why I seem to know which way to go. I think it's all of the stories, all the way people described it is just like this, almost down in some kind of valley of such with rocks on either side of you, and the cave almost perfectly waiting for you in the middle, just tempting you with its calls. So I keep going now further and further, and it becomes more bright. I'm glancing up occasionally, trying to see what's going on, but I can't see any more movement. I do notice what appears to be some kind of orange tent though, and a green one, which might be a rock next to it. This is on another hill a bit further away. I remember the only logical possible explanation to this is that some other people have went here to explore just like I did. And in my young mind I think, yeah, they're going to be excited to see me. Now I do notice something that I can't be sure wasn't a figure of my imagination at the time, but I'm almost certain that one of the figures seems to make a Y pose, very similar to what I'd seen before. It was really weird. It was literally just like what I'd seen on the rocks. I can only see the one figure at the time, but I think this is quite weird. I think maybe they're just doing it for, I don't know. I want to find out. I have to have a battle plan now. I decide the best thing to do is go up towards where the tents are just to have a little explore and figure out what they're doing. Because even though I was naive, I wasn't entirely unsensitive to danger. My mum would argue that this isn't the case and she still would now, but it didn't matter. I was there to investigate. So I kept on going. I'm not too far away from their tents, and as I walk closer, I notice that the wind starts picking up. Now, I've noticed that this isn't the only time this had happened. There was a few other times that the wind had picked up all of a sudden when I was out here like this, or at least on my own in the woods, and it was definitely odd. It kind of sounded like I was going up a mountain a bit, which is bizarre because there was no wind up until this point. I'm now going through an area which brings me closer to the woods and closer to the cave. I actually decided to follow the harder path which would lead me to the tents. I can make them out more clearly now. One is definitely orange and the other's kind of more hidden. I don't know if it has a camouflage pattern or if it's just green, but it's very difficult to see. I can only really figure out that it's a tent because of its close proximity to the other one. I decide to go into quiet mode now, basically not walking on the rocks making sounds. I was quite small then, so I'm not really bothered about standing up. I knew I could crouch down for a little bit. I suddenly hear some kind of sound. It sounded like a metal gate opening and it really scared me. I actually duck down and hide under a tree when I hear it. I waited here for probably about 5 minutes or so, looking around trying to see if there's anybody else here but me. I don't see anyone. Actually, it sounds more like a chain moving now that I hear it once more. So I just stop and wait. I'm really not sure what this is. I'm inquisitive but more scared, so I just stayed there for a while. About 20 minutes or so pass when I eventually decide that it's in fact safe enough for me to leave my retreat, and I start moving once more. So I'm making my way out and I get closer to the tents trying to be really quiet, and I notice the tents moving. I think, yeah, they've probably only just moved here or something and not really set it up properly, but I can't be absolutely sure. So I just wait and wait and wait, until eventually I notice something. The tent looks like it's in horrible condition. It looks like it's seen lots of storms. I now stand up and stop crouching as I'm trying to see it better, and I make my way closer to the other tent. That's odd, that looks exactly the same. I can actually see parts of it moving in the wind, almost in sync with the wind I can hear from being slightly further away. So now I go closer and closer until I can see that nobody's around. I feel confident enough to just walk normally on the rocks now, and I edge closer and closer, slowly creeping up to them. I go to the orange tent first, and this thing doesn't look like it's in good condition whatsoever. I can see it more so now. I crouch down and poke my head into the tent. Through that hole, I can see no one, just that this thing was abandoned long ago. For some reason this puts my mind at ease and I feel comforted by knowing this. I now turn around and go up to the green tent. I get a little bit closer to it and I realise that I can't see into this. I have to open the zipper. I go to do so and the door's already opened. It smells really bad in here too. I only looked for a second, but I can see no one's in here. So I stand up with the sound of the wind all around me. That's really weird. Why would people have tents set up here and just seem to leave them like this? The first one didn't look like it was too cheap either, so I think this is a bit weird. Well, anyway, I've got to get to that cave. I stand up for a moment with the wind in my ears and I just take a second to think, do I want to do this? Well, yeah, I decide that I want to. I've got to see what it is. I've got enough time in the day to just make it back, and the sun's come up now and I feel more confident. I'm constantly looking out for different people, by the way. I probably should have mentioned this more, but I was being incredibly vigilant at the time of this. So I keep making my way down, and there it is, the cave. Wow. Beautiful. More pretty than I expected it to be. It looks very warm and inviting. I spend a while trying to figure out if I should definitely go or not. I realise that I'm probably not going to be able to see too much, and I quickly look around for my backpack. Oh yes, I think to myself as I realise that I have a lighter in the pack. I didn't smoke or anything, just sometimes we'd like to make little campfires on our adventures, and I had it for this. Great, and that thing was almost full. I test it out and I accidentally burn myself. I realise I'm going to have to be careful or not do it when I'm actually outside in the wind. I take a look around one more time just to make sure nobody else is here, and then I notice it again, more strange markings on some of the rocks close to here. What is that? I just don't know why I keep seeing them. It seems weird that they're all leading up to the cave. I'm stuck here pondering why this would be here when I hear the wind in my ears once more. It kind of snaps me out of it, and I run my hand along it again. I don't know why, maybe it was OCD or some kind of habit, but I do so, then decide that I should just keep pressing on now, and be strong. I start slowly making my way towards the cave, and my feet feel incredibly heavy. I've got the lighter in my hand. My hand's quite cold from gripping it so much. I think I stopped the blood flow, so I stopped doing that after a little bit. I start making my way towards the mouth of the cave when I see something further in. I don't know exactly what it was, but I can definitely see something there. Maybe it's some kind of glowing mushrooms or something, or fireflies. I don't know. It's definitely something with a faint glow there. So I step in, and I can hear what sounds like water dripping. This gave it a really creepy sound, especially mixed with the sounds of the wind outside. I'm gonna keep going, but it definitely felt odd. It kind of felt like you put me into the scene of some kind of haunted house or something, or you know the movies where the world's ended through, I don't know, atomic bombs or something, and you're out in a wasteland and the explorers just come outside? Or I don't know if any of you have played the Fallout 3 game when he just leaves the vault. It was just like that. It was just kind of weird. I suppose it did look a little bit like it if I think of it now. But I decided to go in. I don't flash the light immediately using my torch. I thought I should let my eyes adjust a little bit. I still had some senses about me. I take my steps now in sync with the dripping of the water in the background. Drip, 1 foot, drip, another foot, and so on. I'm just constantly doing this, trying not to be noticed. I now realise that I need to flick on the light because I've just walked into a rock and I'm scared I'm gonna hurt myself. Okay. I slowly raise the lighter up with my hand trembling a little bit and flick on the light. Nothing changes. I can see that there's something along the sides of the walls. I don't know what it is, actually. Maybe it's like slime or something, but it's almost like a strange liquid which is a little bit reflective. The cave seems really dark too, I mean, it doesn't match the outside rocks, which are white. It's really dark. The only reason I could really see where I was going is because of the reflections of this. I realise now that I'm going to have to keep my lighter on, which is okay. I just set the flame to the brightest setting, and I start making my way forward. It was actually getting too hot for me, so I decided to use part of my jumper. I know that's a stupid idea because it could have set me on fire, but I wasn't thinking straight. I can't see anything glowing now because where I'm going. It's hard to describe it, but it's kind of like I could only see maybe 1 or 2 feet in front of myself, if that. I knew I was definitely progressing the right way because of the dripping sound going on every so often, getting louder. But that wasn't comforting. Then, I hear a sound again, kind of like a metallic one. It sounded like a heavy chain swinging. That's odd. I drop down very quickly, turning off the light as I do so. I couldn't be certain if it was because of the wind or not, but it was definitely odd, and I don't know where this is coming from. For some reason I get it in my head that now I kind of want to get a move on to try and make my way away from whatever this thing is. So I quickly flicker on the light again, and I can see the faint glow of something. It's not too bright, and I presume that it's going to be a big column of glowing mushrooms or something. I don't know. So I make my way closer and closer. I realise that because of the way the rocks are, I'm not going to be able to see it until I'm right there. It was like looking down into something, but you've got rocks obstructing your view. So I go a little bit further, turning off my light for a second so I can feel along the walls. They're very cold and slimy. It doesn't smell bad, so I've not got an issue doing so. I now get to the corner and decide to flick on my light, holding it out in front of me, extending my hand. I don't know why, this made me feel more safe for some reason. I felt like, well, if they can see my hand first, if there is anyone in here, they're going to react to it, or say something, so it gives me an extra second just to run. But that doesn't happen. I did so for about 4 seconds before waving my hand around, thinking that maybe I could taunt something, but nothing happens. Okay, let's go. Well, I turn off the light for a second and I realise that it's glowing brighter now, these mushrooms. Then, I come around the corner and I'm amazed to see so many of these different mushrooms everywhere. There was probably about 7 or 8 different sections of it, and I can't make out exactly what it is at first. I flick on the lighter again, and I realise that they're all connected together. I hold my lighter up towards where some are, and then I realise it's got a different shape, which seems somehow familiar, but I don't know how to describe it. It takes a second, but I realise that these seem to be bones, which are somehow glowing very slightly. It almost looked like if you put the glow-in-the-dark paint off of a watch, which was really fading away onto them, and I can't make out what they are. I do something probably stupid, but I didn't know what else to do. I take out some of the scrunched up newspaper that we used to use before to make fire, and some other things. I actually had quite good materials to make a torch because of having firewood and things like that. So, in the dark, I managed to set this up and tie everything together with the newspaper to make a big torch. It takes a while and I can't seem to set fire to it, until eventually, boom, off it goes. Now it takes about 2 seconds as I kind of blind myself as I was staring straight at it, and then I illuminated the whole room. I'm now stood, almost surrounded by 7 or 8 skeletons, all turned to face me. I can now see that only one of them has a very faint glow, the others are barely at all, and I'm just stuck in a trance there. I wipe up my eyes quickly and slap my head, probably about 5 or 6 times, starting to slowly panic. What the heck is this? I've never seen skeletons before in real life, so I don't know why they're all like this. Some of them are just piles in the corner, but some of them look like they've been propped up to look like they're actually people. For some reason, Just stayed here for about 1 or 2 minutes, just taking it all in. The cave actually goes on even further when I hear the metal sound again, from now even deeper into the cave. That was my cue to get out of there. I'm very scared that something's going to come from deeper in the cave, so I start moving backwards very slowly and very carefully, feeling along the wall. I trip myself over and out goes the light at the same time. Oh, come on, you've got to be kidding me, I say to myself, as I turn around, not really able to see now, fummaging around for my lighter. Eventually, I'm able to find it, and I'm feeling along the wall. I keep expecting to hear the metallic sound behind myself again, but I don't hear much of anything. I don't know where my torch has gone, so that's really frustrating. I wish I actually had a flashlight, an actual source of light that wasn't so basic, but I didn't think to. I can now see the mouth of the cave, and I start making myself more and more confident, trying to talk to myself positively in my head. As soon as I get to a part that I'm in a clearing, I sprint out of there. I don't know why I felt so scared. Probably because I've never been in that situation before, but it was weird. I felt fear in reverse. Maybe it was my body taking a while to react to what had just happened. But I was more scared running than when I was actually there. Would you believe it? So I decided that I'm going to run just the exact way that I've come. Luckily, this part is downhill, so I don't have too much of an issue with it. I didn't look around, I was just more focused on the ground. It was almost like everything in my surroundings went blurry except for what was directly in front of me, and I keep up the pace. I'm running, and now I'm almost about halfway to where the ground level's out again, and I have to go back uphill. I stop for a second before sprinting and turn to look, and I can see the figures once more. It kind of looked like two ants because where I was, but they're at the mouth of the cave, and you can see that they're searching for something, almost like when you've just disturbed someone and they're trying to get their bearings about them. I take a deep breath and start sprinting. This is all the fuel that I needed. Now I am religiously looking over my shoulder watching them as they grow further and further away, becoming smaller and smaller. Now the last thing I could see of them is that they both went back into the cave. God, what have I just discovered? What have I just unearthed, I think, as I'm making my way back now. I was actually really scared when I see the markings on the rock that I'd seen before again. It kind of gave me a surge of adrenaline as I realised that everything was linked somehow, and I didn't like it. I luckily still have a little bit of water, but drink it too fast and it actually makes me vomit a bit. I was so scared I didn't even stop to do this. I did it on the go and keep going. I don't know where my bike is, but I was probably too scared to notice it, as I'm now making my way through the forest. It was pretty tough going, but I didn't feel too much pain at the time. My legs were definitely starting to get more numb now, as I keep going. I make my way back into the bigger part of the forest that I was familiar with. Now the sun was still shining quite high in the air, and I think that gave me some form of confidence knowing that I'm not out here in the dark. So I keep on going until eventually I get up to where the familiar area is, and I'll be able to make my way back home now. As I get there, I realise that none of my friends are there, and I can't believe that they've abandoned me like this. I can't believe what I'd seen. I eventually make it to the relative safety of a little bit of civilization, and I'm trying to keep up kind of like a fast walking pace to get back home. I actually hear a cop car, and for some reason it made me panic. I thought somehow I'd trespassed and they were looking for me, so I actually ducked down waiting for them to go. I say to myself, come on man. I almost felt like I was on some kind of secret mission, just trying to get back out of here. Well, eventually I make it back to my home just in time for dinner. I now have a new danger and fear. My mum. What's she gonna do when she realises the bike's gone? She says, hey, where's your bike? And thinking on my feet, I said, oh yeah, Matt's got it. I gave it to Matthew and his brother for the week, and she says, "Oh, that's so kind of you." And I didn't say much of anything. I just ate my dinner, then went straight up to bed. I could tell I was exhausted, but I didn't know how much so. I actually slept through until maybe 1 PM the next day, so I got over 12 hours sleep and I felt good for resting. It's probably been about 20 or so years since this experience, and I never actually found out what was in those caves. Whether they're actually real skeletons or not, or why one of them seemed to be glowing, or who those people were. I ended up never going back to that area once more, but for all I know they could still be out there, and something horrible could have happened. I don't sleep easily at night, and sometimes I just can't stop thinking about it and it makes me panic. This occurred when I was about 15 or 16. I was also with a friend of about the same age and his dad. We were exploring the woods behind our houses. We lived in the same neighborhood. We went back into these woods many times to hike around and play paintball. One day though, we decided to go a little deeper in the woods just to check it out. A little background is that this is an old forest growth / protected wetlands area with a few square miles that are surrounded by roads on all four sides, located in the northeast United States. For a while, we were wandering along. It was mid/late spring, so the forest is pretty lush and green, when one of us sees a small patch of white coming through the woods. I mean, it stood out quite easily in contrast to the green leaves, so we decided to investigate, and the three of us headed off in directions towards this mysterious white spot coming through the leaves. If you've ever walked through dense woods, you'll know how difficult it is to go in a straight line because of fallen logs and brush. Anyway, we keep walking towards this object for what seems like a while, but this object still hasn't come into focus. It looks like it's a white blob, and it's just getting further and further away from where we spotted it. We didn't think too much of it at this point, or at least I didn't, and continued walking in the direction of this thing. It must have happened 2 or 3 times that we'd walk towards this thing for a few minutes, stop and notice that we aren't getting any closer. Now by this point, I think there was a little tension building, but nothing out of the ordinary. At some point though, as we're getting closer, we do notice the object is starting to fill out. We can clearly see now that it's a tiny white house on a hill. I'd say the structure was about the size of a shed you might keep your lawnmower in. We were excited because how often do you come across something like that? It's still a little ways away, but again, very obvious that this little white house is what we had seen and were walking towards. So we continue towards the little house, and we lose sight of it momentarily as we go up over another hill, but as soon as we come to the top of the hill, the house is gone. Now we're really confused and both look at each other but keep walking up the hill that we've seen the house on. This last part happened pretty quickly. We get to the top of the hill, still looking at the other hills close by to see if maybe we just turn around or something and we'd see the little house, until one of us noticed an old foundation at the grounds where there obviously a house had once been. The shape of the foundation was exactly the size of this mysterious vanishing white house. I barely had time to notice the foundation when all 3 of us heard a growl, which sounds like it's getting louder until it's almost as loud as a chainsaw. Nothing was said, but the 3 of us, including my dad's friends, all sprint out of the woods in the direction that we've come. I don't recall ever discussing what happened to the 2 other friends I was with that day. Since this happened, I tried looking on Google Maps for some kind of indication that the house was there, but it's just a forest which is too thick. About 1.5 years ago, I told my brother what happened and we went back into those woods looking for the house's foundation, but I didn't find anything. Although, our search wasn't very thorough though. It was winter, so it's pretty cold and had snow on the ground. But it'd be hard to pick out where the house was meant to be because of the snow. One of the weirdest stories that I've ever heard happened is not my own, but my father's. My father works as a forest service worker, and he had many weird encounters over his years. This one in particular gave me chills all throughout my childhood, and it made me constantly just question things. Now, I'll tell this exactly how my father's told me and how that he's wrote it down for me, so sit back and enjoy. I think it's truly bizarre. Now, to start out, everything's going pretty well in life. I'm happy and my wife is now pregnant. Now this is going to be our second child. We already had our other one who's about 1 now, and we're really excited to have a second. We had a boy and we were hoping for another girl. It turned out that we had another boy, but that was just as much joy into our lives. Those who haven't experienced parenthood don't understand how it changes your life sometimes, and how it changes your approach to taking risks. I know that I certainly had the same feeling too. Now, where I was based at for my job, I didn't really encounter anything too heavy. I hadn't been working this role for that many years, and there was other more experienced guys out there. In fact, a lot of the time I'd actually get quite frustrated because I really truly wanted to do more, but I just wasn't able to. Sometimes there would be things that the other guys would know that I could do, and they would just rush off to do it before I had the chance to, and it was so frustrating. I enjoyed being out there, don't get me wrong, but I was kind of stuck doing more computer stuff and just, I guess, the boring things. Now, at this place, I knew that I could progress, but it was going to take years. They basically offered me all the training and everything, but my god, it was slow. The thing was, I was probably smarter than all of the people there, just not being given any opportunities that I needed to progress. It was almost like they'd given me this form, and it said everything I needed to do, but there were holes in it that they couldn't see, and it made me feel really uncomfortable. I was quite tempted to join the Navy. I actually wanted to become a Navy SEAL at the time. It wasn't really possible because of some of the injuries I had, but I know that if I really pushed myself, I probably could have overcome them. But the problem was, even sometimes when I was doing this job, even just hiking around and doing my normal things, I would have a pain that I couldn't seem to stop from the bottom of my foot. I actually still have issues with it today. I'm not quite sure why it started, but yeah, it's just something I get on with. So on this particular day, it was just the same. There was more exciting call-outs and things to go and do, but literally before I could even get to the radio to say I would do it, someone would say I'm on it and would already be up there with their coffee in their hand, taking the last sips of their coffee before flying on out the door and to go and have all the fun. Yeah, it kind of really sucked doing this, but I guess it gave me more time to think and just relax a bit. The problem is, if you're like me, that time very quickly lends to boredom. I started going through some of the records and some of the reports. I basically had to reorganize them because some people in this office area, they would just throw everything onto a desk and not do anything. They would only look for items if they needed it, which of course is a very stupid idea and wastes everyone's time, but back in my day, I guess that's how it was. So I start reading through some reports. There was a few pretty creepy things on there. Some people would say that they had a feeling, like an intense feeling of fear that they couldn't describe, accompanied by a knocking on some of the trees. They were never able to locate the source of this sound, and they thought it was just animals, but it came up quite often over the years. Then I heard a really strange one. Apparently, there was a ranger that worked here, and a lot of the other people thought that he was going crazy. I was reading a second-hand account of what had happened to him. Apparently, something had spoke to him and told him the future. Weirdly though, when I looked back through another account, which was more recent than that one, some of the things that he said actually come true. And the person making the report actually noted that and how weird it was. Upon further investigation, it turned out that this person thought that he had spoke to beings or something. I don't know, kind of like aliens? They didn't describe it very well, just very vaguely. Now it seems like many of these cases were dismissed. There were other weird things too, like a specific area where you'd feel very hot. completely unnaturally, to the point that you'd actually question if there was some kind of hot spring there, or something weird that shouldn't have been there, but again, they could never find the source of it. The thing that made this even more bizarre is that eventually the plants and trees and everything in the area would start to die, so you basically knew for certain that something was definitely off there. Now, I decided that I had to get out and do the very minimum just to not be in the office, and that's what I did. I remembered setting out, and I was being a little bit more paranoid than normal. I think all these stories were just playing in my head. I remembered I kept thinking that I saw something walking through the tree line above, ahead of me, always maintaining the higher ground. It kind of just trailed alongside me. It's really hard to describe, but was truly creepy. Now, I don't know what it was, but I think it was some kind of large animal there. Not big enough to be a bear, but certainly weird. I did think maybe it was a hiker out there, but it wasn't possible. I thought that was bizarre. I remember thinking to myself that you've just learnt the power of human potential in the mind, and it was pretty scary to me. Now, life goes on. We probably get to about a month or 6 weeks in, and again, they're just not training me properly. It's kind of really annoying because they'll complain at me for doing something when it's exactly how somebody's told me to do it. And they'll say, oh no, just do it confidently. But then they'll say, why did you do that? And you'll explain that's how you're trained, and they wouldn't seem to listen, and it was kind of like a hostile group. I didn't end up staying there for too long, but I'll get to that later. So what do? Once again, get reserved to balancing the books and just doing the normal work. Now, this is actually at a time before we had computers, so it did make days very boring too. The problem I found is that some people just did not have good handwriting. I've never been the best at reading others' handwriting, but especially in these situations, my god, it was like some of these people had honestly made an effort to write as illegible as possible. And again, if you can't read it, they complain, so I kind of become an expert of reading these things eventually. And again, every so often there's weird reports. I realise too, quite often when it's recorded, people just think, oh, it's the other guy not paying attention. Maybe he wants everyone to look at him and stuff like that. At least that's on the report conclusion, but I had a feeling that something was off when I kept on seeing the reportings of some kind of beings out there. This spanned over a number of years too, and long before I was there. They all seemed to be described as relatively the same. They called them the forest walkers. Apparently they seemed to be quite tall, and they would walk in almost a weird limp motion. The weird thing is that they would be silent too, and if you approached them, weird things would happen. Some people said they felt almost like they were high. Others said that they would just know things they couldn't have otherwise and stuff like that. I don't know if I believe in the supernatural that much, or at least at the time I didn't, but I just considered that these were just things that happen when you've been out in the woods for too long by yourself. Now eventually as time increased, and I started complaining to the higher ups about the issues I was having, I started to get out more and do more interesting things. I even got to rescue a few people too, which is a really cool feeling. I don't know if you've ever experienced it before, but there's something so cool about knowing that you preserved human life. You stepped in and you made a big difference and impact for someone. It's not something I'd felt before in other jobs too, so I was quite happy. Now, as I go out for a patrol one evening, I remembered having a strange feeling that the air was different. There was almost some kind of metallic smell that I couldn't quite describe. I was concerned that I had some kind of illness or that I accidentally got something on my nose, but no matter how much I wipe my nose, I can't seem to get rid of the feeling. And there was almost some kind of static in the air. You know, like when you have static electric and just before you feel the buzz, it was kind of like that. Now that's when I feel something. I can tell something's looking at me and I stop to turn around and see what it is. And then I can make out some kind of figure. It's probably about 20 feet away. It's wearing kind of like a dark coloured robe, but when it gets closer it appears more white. It walks with a weird limp and I can't believe my eyes. I actually rubbed my eyes quickly, not sure for a second if I'm dreaming, and it's gone. Now I think this is pretty creepy. I want to figure out what this is, so filled with excitement, I actually jogged towards where it was. Now I couldn't tell you too much else about it, but just that it completely vanished. I probably spent another hour myself actually searching the surrounding areas, just to see if I could find something, anything there to explain what I'd just seen, but alas, I come up blank. There's nothing there but myself. Now I'm actually a little bit irritated because I don't want to seem stupid. I really don't want to become like one of the people whose stories I've read, probably to be dismissed later on the same way that I dismissed some of theirs. But currently, it seems like I'm going to have no option but for that to be the case for myself. Yeah, it sucked really. I go back eventually and tell them what happened. Now, no one believes me, which is what I expected, and they say, yeah, you're too junior to be going out there and investigating things like this. I was pretty fed up again. I come from a role before where I was very well respected, and honestly, the way I was being treated was really annoying me. Now, a few months go on, and it becomes winter, and the going gets a little bit more tough really. It was pretty cold out there. I mean, uncomfortably so for myself. Now, I remembered on one particular day, I can't tell you specifically what I was doing, I just remembered that I was out there, that I spotted something weird, I mean really bizarre. There were these small figures, kind of limping around in the woods, again silently. Now I can't believe what I'm seeing. They're probably about 5 feet tall now, and in more of a white coloured gown kind of thing. Like I said, I didn't know what this was. I thought maybe it was something from Halloween, like decorations people put out there. And I actually wasn't too scared now. I was convinced that this wasn't actually a real thing or threat or danger, so I decided to sit back and very slowly follow these things. Now I didn't look behind myself, so there could have been more, but these things just kept on marching on, kind of down the path for a good 10 minutes longer. Now they never once seemed to notice me or so much as turn around, so again, I'm still not entirely sure what I'm seeing, but I think it's some kind of Halloween decoration that someone's playing around with. I don't know, it could be a cult, it could be anything, but I'm not too worried. I don't know if it was the size of them or what, but I just wasn't concerned. Also, there seemed to be nature interacting normally around, so that meant that these things weren't a threat, at least I thought. So this continues on until eventually they all stop at something. I stopped too, and I can see about 4 of them. I was incredibly curious as to what they were looking at, but there's no real way for me to be able to see where I'm based currently. I get closer and closer and realise that I'm going to have to take the long way round now to figure out what it is. I decide to take a stealthy approach, and I try and walk very slowly through the foliage and get around. I do make it to a pretty good horizon, and I can see in front, and I still can't figure out what they're looking at. Now I'm sure these are people now, so I become a little bit more confident, and I walk down even closer to where they are. Eventually, I ended up crashing through some of the brush, and I decide that I'm going to be more present now. Obviously these people know that I'm here, so what's the point of trying to hide away from them? I go a little bit quicker now, and eventually go round to where I think that they're facing, and I can't see their actual faces. It's kind of just dark where that their faces are completely covered up in something. Now, I crouch down to get a better look at them, and suddenly, I can hear voices in my head. They don't sound like voices I ever heard before too, and it's almost like my own voice but different. And I keep hearing different things that haven't happened yet. I hear about the birth of my son and know that it's going to be a boy. I know exactly what he's going to look like, how my career's going to go, what my wife's going to do, and some of the hardships that come up and who's going to pass away in my family. It actually makes me incredibly emotional at this point, and I almost feel like it's too much and start to cry a bit. I ended up kind of just becoming overwhelmed with my emotions, and I fall back into the dirt and stare up at the sky. The sky's very bright today, and it actually looks quite nice. After a moment, I kind of stop hearing the voices so much. They kind of just slowly fade out, like somebody slowly turning down the volume on a record, and I get up. I realise now that whatever these things are has gone now, and I'm just here alone, very confused as to what's actually just happened to me. I get up, and I'm sure there's going to be an explanation for this. I ended up scouring around for probably another hour and a half until I conclude that nothing's here. That's when my panic finally catches up with me, and I decide that I need to get back as quick as possible. I start making my way there. I eventually get back to the station and immediately write down my report. I didn't speak to anybody else about what had happened, and that's when I'm confused. I suddenly realised that what I was reading was very similar to some of the reports of what had happened years before. The ones where that people had considered the guys that were reporting it a little bit crazy or seeing things. And for that reason, I actually took the report and ended up throwing it into the trash. I didn't want my colleagues to think I was crazy. I mean, I didn't like most of them to begin with. I knew that this was going to hurt me moving on to the other areas that I wanted to work, so there was going to be no benefit of me actually posting this. And I ended up moving on and working as a ranger in different areas and doing different kinds of roles too, even being a fire service worker. Now here's the weird thing. I only realised it much later, but I did have a son, and he looked exactly like I knew he would. The job that I changed into is exactly what I heard I would. My wife's role too. Also, some family members that died, they were the exact people who I was told would do so as well. Now suddenly I felt kind of a weird fear come over me, almost like a wash and flood of emotions coming back, realising that something had contacted me back then, and for whatever reason wanted me to know what was going to happen. I can't put my finger on why this happened or how it happened to me. I just know what I saw was real, and that I wasn't the only person that saw those kinds of things out there. Lots of my other colleagues had experienced some very similar things, and I just don't know what to make of it all. Now this is an experience which happened to me in the spring of 2018. I had a few which could be considered paranormal in life, but this was the most recent one and unnerving. I'm an avid outdoorsman and love to hunt and camp around the Francis Marion and Sumpter National Park. Back in 2018, I took my young son and dog out to a remote area in the National Forest to test out a new camper shell on my recently purchased truck. We found a secluded area of a dirt road, made dinner, and then packed it in for the night as soon as it got dark. Around 11 PM at night, I sat up and looked out the back, due to the sound of a dog growling. In the distance, I saw what looked like hundreds of small white balls of light darting around, hovering a few seconds and slowly converging on our campsite. They just looked like dust orbs that you've seen on videos, but these were producing light in a completely dark forest. They then surrounded my truck, and it felt weird almost seeing like hundreds of them. They're like a soft white light and they don't blink. They just kind of float around. And then I finally work up the nerve to open the truck and lit a lantern, and promptly they disappear. After turning off the lights and locking up, they come back. My son was fast asleep, thank goodness. I watched him until I fall asleep around 1 AM. The next morning when we tried to leave, the battery on the truck was dead. There wasn't any lights in the back cab where we would have used any power, and a week later we actually had to replace the electrical control module. Not sure what happened.